My name is Audrey B. I'm 33 years old, a systems analyst for a healthcare software company. I live in a major metro area, keep a predictable schedule, and prefer structure over chaos. My life is simple by design. Work, the gym, quiet evenings at home. I'm not impulsive and I don't function well in uncertainty. My boyfriend was Nathan Cole, 30. We had been together a little over 2.5 years and living together for the last 14 months in a 2-bedroom apartment downtown. The lease was in both our names, but I paid the larger share of the rent and utilities because my salary was higher. That arrangement had been mutual, practical, agreed upon. Nathan has a younger sister, Caitlyn. She's 26, chronically between jobs, permanently figuring things out, and always one emergency away from needing rescue. She had stayed with us before. In Caitlyn's world, temporary usually meant until someone forced a deadline. 3 weeks ago, Nathan came home unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. He dropped his bag, kicked off his shoes, and announced he had exciting news. That phrase alone made my stomach tighten. His sister was moving in. Not for a few weeks. Not until she got back on her feet. Permanently. He said it casually, like we were out of coffee. Then he added that since I already covered most of the bills, it made sense for me to absorb the additional costs too: food, utilities, internet. Caitlyn was family, he said. She needed support. I should be happy to help. I asked when this had been discussed. He said it didn't need to be. I told him I wasn't comfortable with that. We needed to talk about boundaries, finances, and a timeline. That was when his tone shifted. If you don't like it, you can move out. No hesitation. No negotiation. Just a challenge. I studied him for a long moment and realized he wasn't bluffing. He expected me to fold. Understood, I said. He laughed as if he had won something. He had no idea what he had just set in motion. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice or list reasons or try to persuade him. When someone gives you an ultimatum that cleanly, the only honest response is to accept it at face value. I went into the bedroom and closed the door. Not dramatically, just quietly. I sat on the edge of the bed and shifted from emotion to logistics. That has always been my default. Remove feelings and decisions become simple. The lease was month to month. That detail mattered more than anything else. We had chosen it because Nathan liked flexibility. He once said long leases made him feel trapped. I had agreed at the time. I pulled up the lease agreement on my phone and confirmed the notice period, 30 days. Then I opened my laptop and started a checklist. Cancel internet. Transfer utilities. Change my mailing address. Research storage units just in case. I was calm in a way that probably would have unsettled him if he'd seen it. An hour later, he knocked and walked in without waiting for a response. He asked if I was done sulking. He said Caitlyn would be here in 2 weeks and that I needed to adjust my attitude. He added that once she moved in, the second bedroom would be hers, so I should clear out my office setup anyway. I looked at him and said I had already given notice. He blinked. Notice for what? The apartment, I replied. I'll be out before Caitlyn arrives. You can keep the place if you want, but I won't be on the lease or paying any bills. That was the first crack in his confidence. You can't just do that, he said. We live together. Couples work things out. You're being dramatic. It's just family helping family. I reminded him that he told me to move out if I didn't like it. I told him I took him seriously. That's not what I meant, he said. That sentence came too late. The moment he made my housing conditional on obedience, the relationship changed shape permanently. He was only just beginning to understand that. The next few days were surreal in the calmest way possible. Nathan acted as if nothing had shifted. He talked about paint colors Caitlyn might like. He complained about how cramped the apartment would feel with 3 people, then added that sacrifice was part of adulthood. He even asked if I could help move some of Caitlyn's boxes later that week. I didn't engage. I had already scheduled the lease termination with the property manager. I sent written notice the same night he gave me the ultimatum. Flexibility, it turns out, cuts both ways. I confirmed everything in writing. I would be vacating at the end of the notice period and removing my name from the lease entirely. No speeches. No warnings. Just procedure. When the confirmation email came through, I forwarded it to my personal account and archived it. Nathan noticed the boxes first. I packed methodically, clothes, then my desk setup, then the kitchen items I had purchased myself. I didn't touch anything that was truly shared unless I could prove it was mine. I labeled each box and stacked them neatly in the corner of the bedroom. He asked what I was doing like he genuinely couldn't tell. "I'm preparing to move out," I said. He laughed. Said I was being petty. Said I was trying to scare him. He told me I just needed time to cool off and that I would change my mind. Then he reminded me that Caitlyn had nowhere else to go and said it would be heartless to abandon them over money. The framing was deliberate. "This isn't about money," I told him. "It's about being told how my home will function and how my income will be spent without my consent. I don't live in situations where my presence is conditional." He rolled his eyes. Said I was overthinking it. Said a supportive girlfriend would just accept it. That night he sent Caitlyn our address and told her she could start moving things in early if she wanted. That was when I realized he truly believed I was bluffing. So I booked the movers, paid the deposit, scheduled the date, and stopped discussing it entirely. The first crack in his confidence appeared when the utility transfer emails hit his inbox. The panic didn't arrive all at once. It seeped in slowly. First he asked if I was really serious about removing my name from the lease. I said yes. Then he asked if I had spoken to the property manager. I told him it was already handled. Then he asked for the exact date I planned to leave, like there might still be a window to reverse it. I gave him the date. His tone shifted after that, sharper, less amused. He accused me of blindsiding him. Said couples don't make major decisions without talking them through. I tried to talk, I reminded him. "You told me to move out if I didn't like it." "That wasn't literal," he said. "People say things in the heat of the moment." What struck me was that he never apologized for saying it. He only objected to me believing it. Caitlyn began moving her things in early, just as he'd invited her to. Boxes lined the living room. A mattress leaned against the wall. She barely acknowledged me, just nodded as if I were a temporary guest in a space she already considered hers. I stopped using the common areas. Nathan noticed. Asked why I was being cold. Said I was making things awkward on purpose. Accused me of punishing him. "I'm disengaging," I said. "Not punishing." The first night Caitlyn officially stayed over, Nathan tried a new approach. Finances. "Rent's going to be tight without you," he admitted. "Caitlyn's looking for work, but it might take time. Maybe we can revisit how things are split." It was the first time he asked instead of told. "My finances are no longer part of the equation," I said. He stared at me like I'd switched languages. "You're really going to leave me to deal with this alone?" "You made the plan without me," I replied. "So yes." That night he cried for the first time. Not because he was losing me, but because the math was becoming real. The tears didn't last. By morning he had defaulted back to anger. He said I was abandoning him. Choosing money over love. Being heartless to his sister. I didn't argue. I packed the last of my things. Books, the remaining clothes in the closet, the knife set I bought when we first moved in. I left behind anything that was genuinely shared. I wasn't trying to win a property battle. I just wanted a clean exit. He hovered while I worked, making pointed comments. Said Caitlyn felt uncomfortable with the tension. Said it was unfair she had to witness this. Said I was creating instability in the household. That word again, household. As if I were still part of it. "You redefined the household when you made unilateral decisions about who lives here and who pays," I said calmly. "You told me to leave if I didn't like it. I'm doing exactly what you asked." "You're twisting my words," he snapped. I asked him one question. "If I had agreed to everything, would you call that twisting or compromise?" He didn't answer. That afternoon, the property manager called to confirm the final walkthrough date. Nathan overheard and went very quiet. After I hung up, he asked if there was any way to stop it. "No," I said. For the first time he looked scared. Meanwhile, Caitlyn had fully settled in. Dishes piled in the sink. She claimed the couch. Asked Nathan what was for dinner as though it were assumed he would cook. I watched him absorb the shift in real time. The support he thought he was offering was already turning into obligation. That night he tried one last tactic. "We can talk about boundaries again," he said. "Maybe Caitlyn can contribute later. Maybe this doesn't have to end us." "It already did," I told him. "The moment my housing became conditional, the relationship stopped being safe." The movers were scheduled for the following Tuesday. On that morning, Nathan still believed it was a bluff. Nothing felt real to him until strangers knocked on the door and began disassembling furniture. The moment the first box was lifted onto a dolly, his entire demeanor shifted. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "Privately." I stepped into the bedroom with him and closed the door. His voice softened immediately. "This is getting out of hand," he said. "I never thought you'd actually leave. I thought you loved me enough to adjust." "Love doesn't mean surrendering agency," I replied. "I don't stay in situations where my housing and finances are used as leverage." He said I was making a huge mistake. That relationships required sacrifice. That he would never have done this to me. That last part wasn't true and we both knew it. Then he pivoted. "Caitlyn could move out later," he said quickly. "Maybe she can stay with a friend. Maybe we can just pause everything and reset." I looked at him. Why did those options only appear once I was leaving? He didn't have an answer. When we walked back into the living room, Caitlyn was on the couch, scrolling on her phone while the movers worked around her. She didn't acknowledge me. Didn't shift. Didn't offer to help. That image told me everything I needed to know about how this would have played out. As the last of my boxes were loaded, Nathan followed me outside. "Where are you going?" he asked like he hadn't known all along. "Are you really ending everything over this?" "I'm not ending it," I said. "I'm leaving exactly when you told me to." When I got into my car, my phone buzzed almost immediately. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." That sentence explained everything. He never believed my boundaries were real. He thought they were decorative. By the time I drove away, the panic had fully set in. The first night after I left, my phone didn't stop buzzing. At first, it was anger again. Long messages about betrayal, about embarrassing him in front of Caitlyn, about how real partners don't abandon each other when things get hard. He said I ruined his plans and made him look irresponsible. Then the tone shifted. He started asking practical questions he should have asked weeks earlier. Whether I had already transferred the utilities, whether my name was truly off the lease, whether it was reversible. He asked if I could cover my portion one more month, until Caitlyn figured something out. That was the panic talking. I replied once. I told him my obligations ended the day I moved out and that the lease cancellation was final. I told him to contact the property manager directly. After that, I stopped responding. The next morning, the calls started. Missed calls stacked one after another. Some rang to voicemail. Others cut off quickly, like he hung up just to see if I'd call back. I didn't. He texted that Caitlyn still wasn't working. That she was stressed. That the pressure was getting to her. That this wasn't what he expected it to feel like. He said he was overwhelmed and needed help. I noticed something. He never said sorry. Not once did he acknowledge the ultimatum. Not once did he admit he assumed I would fold. Everything was framed as unfortunate circumstances, not consequences. 2 days later, he showed up at my new place unannounced. I didn't let him in. He stood in the hallway crying, saying he'd made a mistake. That he hadn't thought it through. That he felt stupid and scared. That Caitlyn wasn't contributing and he didn't know how to manage everything alone. I listened through the door. When he finished, I told him I was sorry he was struggling, but I wasn't coming back. I told him I didn't feel safe living with someone who treated my stability like leverage. "Is this really it?" he asked. "Yes." He slid down the wall and cried harder. The sound stayed with me the rest of the night. But panic doesn't undo disrespect. Fear isn't accountability. Over the next week, everything unraveled quickly. His texts became less emotional and more desperate. Screenshots of bills. Rent reminders. Utility balances. He said the apartment suddenly felt too big. Too expensive. He said Caitlyn was sleeping all day and staying up all night. Promising to look for work but never leaving the couch. "I feel trapped," he wrote. That word landed differently this time. It was the same apartment. The same month-to-month lease. The same flexibility he once loved when he believed I would absorb the fallout. Now it was closing in on him. He asked if I could at least talk to Caitlyn. Said she respected me more. Maybe I could motivate her. That stunned me. "I was never her parent, her provider, or her buffer," I replied. "You chose this arrangement. I respected your choice by removing myself from it." "I feel abandoned," he said. "You feel consequences," I answered. Around then, a mutual friend told me Caitlyn had been telling people the apartment was basically hers now. That she planned to stay long-term. That Nathan had agreed to support her until she figured things out. I thought back to the night he laughed when I said understood. He had mistaken composure for weakness. The property manager called to confirm the final paperwork was complete. My name was officially off everything. I forwarded the confirmation to myself and archived it without hesitation. That night Nathan called again. His voice sounded flat. Tired. I don't recognize my life anymore, he said. Everything feels out of control. Control doesn't come from issuing ultimatums, I told him. It comes from respecting the people who help hold things together. There was a long pause. Do you still love me? He asked. Love doesn't survive where respect is absent, I said. That here was a long silence. Then he whispered, I messed up. He was right. But by then the damage wasn't emotional. It was structural. The real collapse happened quietly, which somehow made it worse. A few days after he admitted he'd messed up, the messages stopped. No accusations. No desperation. No missed calls. Just silence for almost 48 hours. I assumed he was processing. Or leaning on someone else. Then my phone rang from an unknown number. It was the property manager. She asked if I was aware that Nathan had already fallen behind on rent and utilities. Caitlyn hadn't contributed anything. Nathan was asking if my name could be temporarily added back to the lease, to stabilize things. I laughed before I could stop myself. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. I told her calmly that my lease termination was final and I would not be reattached under any circumstances. She thanked me and said she'd expected that answer. 10 minutes later Nathan called. No anger. No tears. He skipped straight to bargaining. He said he was overwhelmed. Said he made a mistake pushing me. Said he didn't think everything would fall apart so quickly. He asked if I could help just until Caitlyn gets a job. Only temporary, he added. Temporary. I told him that word was exactly how we got here. Caitlyn had been temporary before. Temporary had no expiration date. I'm not stepping back into something I already escaped, I said. His voice cracked. What am I supposed to do now? I gave him the same answer he once gave me. Figure it out. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we'd had. Later that evening, a mutual friend told me Nathan had been venting non-stop. He admitted he never believed I would actually leave. He thought threatening my housing would scare me into compliance. He said he was shocked I chose stability instead of staying to fix things. That confession explained everything. He never expected me to choose myself. By the end of that week he was considering breaking the lease. Caitlyn, unsurprisingly, had no backup plan. The situation he built was collapsing under its own weight, and for the first time I was far enough away to see it clearly. People have asked what the lesson was. If I feel bad now that everything imploded on his side. Here's the truth. Nathan didn't lose me when I packed my boxes. He lost me the moment he decided my home, my money, and my stability were tools he could use to force compliance. The moment he said, "If you don't like it, move out." He believed he was holding power. He expected me to panic. To argue. To bargain. To cave. Instead I listened. I did exactly what he told me to do. That's what shattered his sense of control. The panic came quickly because his entire plan depended on one assumption. That I would stay, that I would pay, that I would adapt no matter how far the goalposts moved. Caitlyn moving in wasn't the real issue. The real issue was that my consent was treated as optional. When I left, the fantasy collapsed. Bills became real. Responsibility landed where it belonged. Caitlyn didn't transform into a contributor. Nathan had to face the arrangement he created, without a buffer. I don't feel guilty. I didn't abandon him. I exited a setup designed to trap me. I didn't punish him. I accepted his ultimatum as stated. I didn't escalate. I disengaged. There's a difference. If there's anything to take from this, it's simple. When someone uses ultimatums casually, believe them literally. When someone treats your stability like leverage, remove it from their reach. And when someone tells you to leave, don't argue your way into staying. I said, understood.